under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to rearrange the agenda. I'd like to take and I'd like to move the items on new business up to the front of the agenda. I'm doing this in case the agenda runs long and Tom has to leave. I like Tom here for that part of the agenda. Can I vote on that?
Move to modify the agenda as stated by the mayor.
Second.
All in favor, please raise the right hand. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're starting on now a new business number 9. Mr. Orlando.
Yes, new business. Sorry, Mayor, just tracking along. Yes, this will be presented by our business license administrator, April.
Okay. April?
Hi, everyone. Hold on just a moment. I'll pull up a presentation. Great. Does everyone see that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here today. I really appreciate your time. My name is April Akins. I'm the Revenue Services Manager here at the town. I'm here today to share with you an update concerning our new South Carolina Business License Tax Law, also known as the South Carolina Business License Tax Standardization Act, or Act 176. Today, I ask that you please consider approval of repealing our current business license ordinance and replacing it with our proposed business license model ordinance number 2021-20 to meet the requirements of Act 176. Updated that to the first 2,000 of gross income. We were at 5,000. And we implemented that in 2018 with the other project with the conversion to NAICS codes. So I've listed here items that we must take action on in order to be compliant with Act 176. We have to allow businesses to make renewal payments through an online payment system that's hosted by the South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office. The town will work with the Municipal Association of South Carolina to implement the payment portal as required by law. Our current online payment portal will remain active to collect other local taxes, including accommodation taxes, beach preservation fees, and also our local hospitality taxes. I can share with you that I sat in on a Zoom call a few weeks ago with our state chamber that was also hosted by MASC to go over the current status of the portal and the implementation across the state. They currently have it in what I would consider a pilot phase, and they have 5 cities across the state that are using it in a live production environment this past year so that they can provide So from that call, I was told that we probably won't be able to implement that until later this year, probably late fall. I know, Mr. Brown, you had a question during the F&A committee meeting about the fees that are associated with this portal, and I can report that there will be fees. The portal is going to charge 2.9% plus 30 cents for card transactions, and then they also have a 0.08% fee or a cap of $5 for the ACH draft. And that would include some mini deposit verification and that kind of thing. And again, that will be statewide. Another item that we have to comply with in our new ordinance is we have to use the law's standardized appeals process. And this is in reference to taxpayers that are assessed a business license tax for, they may not have paid prior years and that sort of thing. So that particular appeals process will be statewide and it will be included in our new ordinance. The law also states that we have to use the law's standardized business license class schedule. And that again will be adopted with our new ordinance. That business license class schedule is how businesses are classified. It's tied to the NAICS codes that we just spoke about. And that is also tied to their rates, their business license rates. In the law, it was very specific about rebalancing our current business license taxes. They gave a very specific criteria on how we were to analyze our business license taxes and the data and determine if there would be a windfall or a shortfall. We completed that part of our project earlier this year. It was in March. And we did discover, unfortunately, we're going to have a shortfall of business license revenue of almost $340,000. And again, that is from moving our businesses from one classification to another. That is mandated by law. It did impact 39% of our businesses. So they will be moved into different classes. Staff is recommending that we increase our rate by 7.2% across the entire business license class rates to achieve a revenue neutral result. So as I mentioned during this presentation, we will need to update our current business license tax code. I've been working with the Municipal Association of South Carolina. They've been a big guide during this process. It's a big project and very important that we meet the deadline. So the MASC created a business license model ordinance for everyone across the state to assist with the process of complying with the new law. The model ordinance addresses the specific requirements that we just spoke about found in the new law and standardizes the process across the state. The model ordinance was created by MASC to be used as a base model, and it can be customized to meet the individual municipality's needs. Because of the new law's complexities, the association is strongly encouraging us to repeal our current town code, our current business license code, and replace it with the model ordinance. Adoption of the business license ordinances that comply with Act 176 must take place by January 1 of 2022. Staff is recommending repealing and replacing the town's current business license code. I've included considerations for you, Town Council. I wanted to go over the items that would make impact and changes through our ordinance. The model ordinance does not allow the business license exemption for a person owning and renting one residential property. We are recommending following the model ordinance and requiring a business license for all property owners that are renting. And that is a common practice across South Carolina. All short-term rentals require a business license, and then there are some differences with the long-term rentals, but they still all have to have a license. The model ordinance does not allow penalties to be waived on delinquent business license tax. We are recommending the town manager or designee the authority to adjust late fees if it's justified. The model ordinance includes a declining rate schedule to businesses reporting gross revenue in excess of $1 million. Back in March, when we were completing our analysis of our business license taxes, we did include the declining rate schedule to see how that impacted our revenue, and found that in addition to the shortfall that we just spoke about, there would be an additional shortfall of almost $615,000. And in order to make up for that, we would have to increase our rates by 11.3% on top of the 7.2. So we are recommending not adopting the declining rate schedule. MASC and the model ordinance do not mandate business license rates for the town. So we must establish our own rates. And again, we are recommending the 7.2% rate increase across all business license class rates to achieve a revenue neutrality from the business class reclassifications. As I mentioned, I've been working closely with MASC through this process. They have created steps for the cities and towns and counties to follow so that we can stay on track and have our compliance by January 1. The first step was to convert to the standard business license year, which we did. Step 2 was to review all business license tax data for accuracy, and that was done during our data analysis earlier this year when we did the rate study. Step 3 is to rebalance our rates to prevent a windfall or loss. Step 4 is to adopt the MASC's 2021 class schedule. Step 5 is to repeal and replace the business license ordinance. Step 6 is to set up an online portal account. And step 7, which I feel is one of the most important, is to communicate the changes about the law to those that are affected by it. I included a timeline or a planned adoption schedule so we can discuss what's been going on behind the scenes, and I can share with you feedback that I've been getting from our community and our business leaders and business owners. They've been very engaged with me, and as you know, we kicked off our introduction of our changes back on June 15th during that Finance and Administration Committee presentation. I have spent the past several weeks, 6+ weeks, working to educate our public, and I've been calling that my education and awareness campaign. My main goal and objective is to deliver the message that the town is here to help. There's a lot of changes coming down through this new law, and it impacts a lot of people. And I have been very diligent about trying to get that information out the best way that we can. I've worked closely with the town's communication and information technology departments to share the information to business owners. I've also worked closely with the chamber. They've been great in pushing public notifications and emails out to its members and the public. You may have seen that come across your desk. We've been in the Monday morning briefings and things of that nature. They've been really great to work with. We've actually had some media coverage. I gave a couple of interviews to WTOC and WJCL. And also the Island Packet has ran several articles on Act 176. We have used our social media platforms across the board, trying to deliver our message and push it out to the public, including a video message that I sent out as well. Another big item that we have worked on and created was there's a special hub on our town's website, and it's all for everything Act 176. I've loaded in a lot of information in there. It might be too much information, but I've gotten a lot of questions, and it's there for anyone who needs to see my presentation or just be able to print materials or ask questions. It's been a great resource for me and for the business owners. We did create materials as well, and I did include that in the agenda packet. I think it's important for you to see what's going out into the public. It has, there's like a general flyer information on Act 176. And I also did a Q&A, if you will, on questions that I'd been getting so that I could send the information out and use that as a resource. In July, I also held a public information session here in council chambers, and I followed it up with another one on August 3rd. And I'm happy to report it was well attended and well received. I had a lot of property management companies show up, and it gave me an opportunity to speak with them in person and find out what their needs would be to help get property owners the information they need about the new business license requirements. They were a great resource. Sea Pines was there. There were many others, Island Time Vacation Company, and I worked with them to come up with a plan so that they could send the information out to their property owners. From their feedback, my team and I created a specialized application for property owners so that they wouldn't get lost in the application process. It's very specific to renting a property. That was some feedback that I got, and we created that. I also created a sample payment form, if you will, like a sample tax form that has the information on how to calculate the tax for a property owner that's going to be renting. And that has been very helpful. It answers a lot of questions, what to expect, what does it look like, how do I calculate it? That's been very useful. Let's see, when we send our stuff out to the property managers, I've also included a link to our website, to the special hub that I referred to. I also have been able to provide the recorded version of the Finance and Administration Committee presentation. That has been extremely helpful to send out to the YouTube link, to send out to property owners that could not be here. They don't live here full time, or anyone who could not attend the sessions. We have sent that out to a lot of people, and they really appreciate it because then they can just watch it on their own time and then call us with questions. That's been a wonderful resource. I, of course, have had frequent staff meetings with Revenue Services, planning implementation. We have a lot of work to do going down, this next year or so. And we're kind of in a limbo transition and trying to get the information out. So we have met a lot. I wanted to make sure staff was ready to answer questions and they had the tools and resources handy at their desk. We've printed the materials that I discussed and we can hand that out. I handed it out at the session as well. We've been emailing everyone. We've had a great response, and everyone has been very engaged. I wasn't sure, what the reaction would be. My last presentation, people clapped, so I was pretty excited about that. I hope that today will be our first town council reading and approval. So I have that on my agenda item here. September 21st, we have a proposed second reading and final reading of our ordinance. And we do have the effective date being September 21st. And that will just be for new businesses that are coming in. That won't impact our current owner or business owners. Their changes will happen when they get their renewal forms in January. So I just wanted to share some of that with you. I also wanted to share the projects that we have, that we're going to start. We've started on some and we will continue working on them. In August, this month, I'm spending time with our software vendor. There's a lot to do with our system in order to get it ready for the changes. And that is going to take some time. Once the software vendor and I have everything tested and completed, we will have to close the business license office for a day to implement those changes. And I really was, I'm hoping to have that day closed the last week of September. And the reason is, October 1st opens up our third quarter tax period, and the taxpayers start paying right away. So I don't want to close the office or have our web portal down during that time period in October. So right now I don't have an exact date, and when I do find that, I will confirm that with our software vendor. I, of course, will let you know. We will be sending that information out with public notices, etc. Because of my engagement with the property management companies during my sessions, I have worked on compiling information and sending out what they need to do to get our information out. They've been great, really, really great, and feedback. So now that I have a template, if you will, I will be reaching out. We've got about 120 property managers. I can tell you, Sea Pines has already sent their information out. They did a mailing, and they have been working through email as well. And we've already been getting applications in. I've been encouraging property owners that will require a license next year to go ahead and send their application in, call us with questions and that kind of thing. We will hold those applications in a queue so that they will get captured during our renewal process, and they will get a tax form come January. They understand that that is due April 30th, and that it will also be calculated on their gross income or gross rent for for this year, this tax period coming up. So that has been a big piece. We are behind the scenes, of course, processing applications. I thought that might start in September, but it's already started. So that's good. I'm glad to have that interaction with people. In October, I plan to convert 1,000 property owner accounts that they just have short-term rental accounts. They have one property. They need to remit accommodation taxes to us because we are receiving it from a manager, if you will. And so they all have accounts. They will require a business license next year. So I will have to work with our vendor and have those converted, as well as notifying them of the changes. So we will send out letters and start emails and phone calls to those group of property owners, so they're aware of why they're getting a tax bill. I hope in October that I will be working with MASC to set up the new payment portal system. As I discussed earlier, that's still slated for fall. November, I typically start preparing for the renewals. It takes a lot of work behind the scenes to even get to the renewal process in the system. So currently we have about 7,000 accounts. I know we'll have another 1,000 based on our property owners that we'll be adding in. We will have more based on applications that are coming in. So that takes quite a bit of time, and I will work through that in November like I normally do. But that will also include me preparing the new payment portal system. Now I'll have two systems that I have to manage and make sure that both are ready for 2022. There's also another group of property owners that we will start contacting. These are, there's about 2,500 of them, and these are people that were contacted during our audits here in our revenue collections department. They were notified by our collectors to see if they're in compliance with, paying accommodation taxes and so forth. And these owners are typically people who own just one property and maybe use a property manager. So they're in compliance right now, but come, the first of the year, they will need a business license. So we'll reach out to them. We have their contact information, verify they still own the property. There's a lot behind the scenes to work on that project. December, we'll process and prepare the business license renewals in both the systems. And that effective date of Act 176 is, of course, on January 1st. And by January 15th, we typically have mailed all of our renewals out. I know that we will be getting applications in probably for the next year. Just as an example, the Revenue Services Department typically processes about 1,000 accounts, new accounts, every year. And now we're looking at several thousand coming in very quickly. I think they will continue to be coming in, even after the due date, and we will work as hard as we can to get them in. It's been all hands on deck. Everybody is ready, and we're just looking forward to getting everyone into compliance. Since I prepared this, I had a couple of other updates. I have been collaborating with our local neighbors, and we asked MASC to host a roundtable discussion here locally. They were offering those, but we would have to go upstate and travel. So they were kind enough, they agreed, and the city of Hardyville was kind enough, and they are going to host it next week. That has since been changed to a Zoom meeting because of COVID restrictions. So I will be sitting in next week with our local cities and counties to just to collaborate and also to find out what we need to do to implement the portal. Also, the Realtors Association reached out to me last week, and they want me to come and present this information to their brokers in charge at a meeting in September. So I don't know now if that will be in person or through Zoom, but I was just happy they reached out and they want to get the information out to the real estate community. Another item I wanted to share is that the average cost of a business license, I pulled the data for this year, for property owners in our area was $200. And again, those are people who own two properties, and we're in a incline of rates for our rentals. As you know, we've been very busy there. So, $200 is not a lot of money. We're not talking about $1,000, $2,000. When the property owners heard that, they were relieved because they were worried it was thousands of dollars. So I did want to just point that out, that it is a tax, and unfortunately, it needs to. We need to have everyone paying their business license taxes, but I haven't had. I've had a lot of good feedback on that.
We live?
Good. Thank you very, very much, April. We appreciate it. Are there any questions from members of the council? Good. Having said that, this is the first reading. I need a motion to.
John, I had a couple of questions, if I could.
Yes.
First of all, April, outstanding job. I'm very impressed with what you've produced for us. It was a huge undertaking, and you deserve all of the accolades for a job beautifully well done.
Thank you.
That said, what is the definition of a single property rental? What I'm getting at there is if someone rents out a property here for a month, is that covered? Does it have to be a minimum of 6 months? How does that work?
So anyone renting their property, no matter if it's for 1 week or for 6 months, whether it's short-term or long-term, would require a business license. If they're generating income on that property, and it's not, personal use, it's not their second home that they're not renting out, then they will need to have a business license.
That's good. I certainly support that, but I think that needs to be emphasized to these single property owners that it's required that way. Secondly, you said that we are adopting the model ordinance. Have we made any changes to the model ordinance that were not specifically authorized by that ordinance?
No, the only, we had to add our ordinance for the telecommunications and the MASC collections that we do. That was added in and carried over from our current ordinance.
All right, and you said that we are not adopting the declining rate schedule. That is something that is specifically authorized in the law. That is for us not to adopt that.
So the declining rate schedule is not in the law. That is something that's in the model ordinance. So it's not required for us to adopt. I know Bluffton did not adopt it. That's something that is used some places around the state, but that's not required.
Excellent. Okay, that's good. And finally, some of the business owners are going to be hit with a fairly significant increase in taxes, I believe. I think that it would be prudent on the town's part to reach out to those that are getting, however you define it, a significant increase and give them a heads up so that all of a sudden at the last minute, we don't have a real serious problem on our hands. So
I definitely agree. Absolutely.
Good. With that, again, thank you for an outstanding job. Well done. That's it, John.
Thank you, sir.
Any more questions from council? Okay, make a motion to accept.
Yes, move approval of the first reading of the business license model ordinance as presented today.
Jeremy seconded. All in favor, raise the right hand. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Orlando, we're going to item B here.
Item B, consideration of the affiliated agency town funding standardization process will be presented to you and the community by John Troyer, Finance Director.
Any abbreviated version?
Yes, well, to summarize it, this has been through Finance Committee. I believe you've heard the presentation, and I will open it up as to what you would prefer with this presentation or questions.
Go ahead, John.
Okay, sure. What we talked about in Finance Committee was an easy to follow process, something that would be consistent for all agencies and very transparent. And so basically would take the model of the accommodations tax recommendations, but substitute the Finance and Administrative Committee. They would do the detailed review and make recommendations on an annual basis to full town council with the budget process. And so our recommendation from Finance and Administrative Committee is a recommendation that council adopt this new process for affiliated agency funding.
Any questions from members of the council?
No, we covered this pretty extensively in F&A.
Okay, good. If there are no questions from council, have a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you very much. Go into number C, consideration of the American Rescue Plan Funding Appropriation Law.
Yes, sir. That is for me to present. Again, and I always say this, John Troyer is the hardest person to follow on an agenda at any time. So thank you, John, for all your hard work. I presented the American Rescue Plan investment plan outline to the Finance Committee. Finance Committee recommended the use of our funds. As a quick brief, the Congressional House Resolution 1319 laid out the legislation guiding local government response to the pandemic. That allowed us to invest in our community to address those issues created by supporting public health expenditures, addressing negative economic impacts, replacing lost public sector revenue, providing premium pay, and investing in water, sewer, broadband. I have laid out for town council and community that investment plan. And on the very last slide on the screen, Krista, I would imagine we could share that quickly. And if you go to the very last slide, Mayor, Council, you'll see that I've proposed, and again, all of this is in the Finance Committee minutes as well, $1 million towards the Community Foundation for Public Health and impact or negative impacts, an investment of $500,000 in year 22 and $500 in fiscal year 23. I've requested the investment for $400,000 into a home repair program that would also allow for removal of unsafe, uninhabited structures through a grant program that we would define and bring back to council. $1 million into town hall technology and enhancements of our current security system. $1 million into a housing public-private partnership. An initial investment of $1 million towards infrastructure. $200,000 in lateral sewer connection grants. Again, and I mentioned in conjunction perhaps with the Project Safe program through Community Foundation. And then also earmarking $1.6 million in public infrastructure. Probably some items we don't yet know. Finance Committee gave a full recommendation. The presentation's online, and I would respectfully request your support.
Any questions from members of the council on Mark's presentation, Mark's report? Alex?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not necessarily a question. Thank you, Mark, for working diligently and quickly on putting this together. We talked a bit during the Finance and Administrative meeting about the funds that will be forwarded over to the Community Foundation in Low Country. And we agreed that we'd ask town manager to work on the criteria as far as the money being dispersed. What I'm suggesting is that we ask the town manager to work expeditiously on that, because the current situation that we're in with the coronavirus spread, okay? We heard from Jeremy Clark, who said that vaccinations are important, testing is important, and at the current moment, we have no testing sites on Hilton Head, public testing sites where one could just drive up and get tested. I know for certain that businesses are afraid and want to be certain if someone is positive or not before they continue to have their employees show up for work. So I would suggest that we work quickly on that piece, okay, to try to offer up some of this money to support that effort, not just leave it on Jeremy at the hospital, because we all know that his hands are full at the moment, okay? So if there's some way to use some of this funding to encourage testing sites on Hilton Head. I know that there are other agencies, nonprofits that can help us with that, but as we all know, everything costs money. So that would be my only recommendation or change to what we have in front of us.
And I will ask Mark right now, while we're here, to have that out to the Community Foundation by next Friday and a copy to the members here by next Thursday.
Okay, I just need some clarity.
Sure.
When we talked to Finance Committee, I was going to bring that criteria within the parameters of the grant to town council, and we would talk about it. But what I'm hearing right now is simply get it together,
as soon as possible.
send it to you as an FYI.
Just for this one item on the Community Foundation.
Okay.
You can do the other one back to the town council.
With council support.
One should get out. You'll have to go. That's okay with that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Does that change or add to the broad brush of what these monies, $1 million to the Low Country Foundation, would be applied to, or something specific that I'm not aware of? I'm sure it exists, currently exists there, that portion of this money would go into to benefit something that Alex has just described. I'm just confused.
I can help with some clarity there. The funds as transferred and distributed by the Community Foundation of the Low Country need to follow those same conditions and strings that the grant or the stimulus funds are set up for. And one of the sections, and it's outlined in the fact sheet that was written on or provided on May 10th, 2021, supporting public health expenditures by funding COVID mitigation efforts medical, behavioral, certain public health, and safety staff. With that clause, the Community Foundation of Low Country would be able to assist those organizations such as Volunteers in Medicine and whomever else through those efforts. And so I'm clear, and it will need to be within the parameter of the stimulus funds.
Okay, so there are already, I just want to be clear for everyone, that there are already established organizations doing this work. This funding will help them to expand their efforts and the rest. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, let's go on other questions in this. Anybody else have a question? Anybody else have any questions from Mark on this presentation here?
Excellent work by Mark. I would move for approval.
Second.
Okay, seeing no more questions, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Good, next on the agenda here is the
Item D, calendar year.
item D, calendar year.
Yes, sir. These are the proposed calendar year 2022 town council meeting schedule. These are the meetings that we are required by law to schedule at least 2 per year or 2 per month, or excuse me, 1 per month for a total of 12 meetings per year. If there's any questions or changes on what has been put before council, I would respectfully ask for a motion and approval.
Move for approval of the schedule as shared.
No,
Second.
you got a copy of this? Second, what we look here.
Call for a second.
Okay.
Okay.
So second, you go.
Mr. Stanford gave us
Okay.
second.
Any questions on this? Okay, all in favor, please raise your right hand.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going back to number 6. Continue on the report by town manager.
Yes, sir. I am pleased to introduce, you've already known him, our chief building official, fearless leader, Chris Yates. Chris is also serving right now as interim director of community development, and I very much appreciate that. As we know, and I'll let Chris get into some details, as we know, we've had that building collapse in Miami some time ago where I believe the realization was that there was some sort of structural integrity issue. Chris Yates is our chief building official, who's very plugged in with the South Carolina Building Official Association, both state level and nationally, has mobilized his staff and his leadership to reach out to building owners and to the community in this regard. And so at the last meeting, you had asked me to have an update and presentation from our chief building official. And with saying that, I will introduce Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Orlando. Good morning, Mayor McCann and members of Town Council. My name is Chris Yates. I am the Interim Director of Community Development. I have over 24 years of construction industry experience, and I have been employed with the town of Hilton Head Island for 11 years. For the past 5 years, I've been the building official for the town. My duties have included managing the day-to-day administration and operations of the building division. The building division's core services are as follows: deliver prompt, efficient, and courteous service in the management, coordination, and inspection of the building permitting process to be in compliance with current state and international building codes for single-family and commercial structures. We collect permit fees and impact fees for both the town and the county. We provide flood hazard determination to homeowners, insurance, legal, and banking representatives. We enforce the National Flood Insurance Program and the town's flood control ordinance. We also conduct educational outreach for the public pertaining to building code and flood regulations. The building division is responsible for permitting and inspecting the construction activities, removal and demolition of every building or structure or any appurtenances connected or attached to such buildings or structures. The adopted building codes only address permitted construction activities and the required inspections to ensure compliance with the codes. Once a structure has received its final inspection or certificate of occupancy, the responsibility for maintenance of that structure for the duration of its life expectancy falls to that structure's owner. Once conditions change or where structures are or become unsafe, the building official has the authority to make a determination and declare such structures as unsafe. If the structure's owner does not agree with the building official's determination that the structure is unsafe, a show cause hearing with the Construction Board of Adjustments and Appeals is held. Once the board agrees with the building official's determination, an unsafe structure shall be taken down and removed or made safe as the building official deems necessary. In light of the recent tragic events that happened in Florida, jurisdictions all over the United States have been evaluating and developing a local response. I have solicited input and feedback from town staff and management to draft a letter that has been mailed to all commercial and multifamily property owners on Hilton Head Island. This letter lists some recommended steps that the property owners can take to enhance the safety of their buildings and structures. Some of the key points for the property owners contained in the letter are to create a routine schedule for life safety and structural integrity inspections using a qualified professional on a minimum basis every year for life safety and 10 years for structural inspections. Now keep in mind, this schedule is flexible and it may need to be adjusted based on changing conditions and the age of the structure. We have also recommended that they perform routine maintenance and repairs in a timely manner, that they ensure building permits are obtained where required prior to beginning any work, and that they always report any deficiencies to the town building division as soon as possible. The building division and town staff are here to help and provide assistance to the citizens and property owners to ensure the safety of our structures and their occupants. With that being said, I am open and happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Any questions for Chris? Could you mention Peter Chris what he's doing?
If I can quickly find that email.
Sir,
He
Mr.
is-
Stanford also had a question.
Oh, maybe you could go to Glenn and then I can
Okay,
find
Glenn's
email.
Thank you. Chris, thank you for your report. You obviously have a huge job. And I'm glad to hear about the notifications that you're sending out to property owners. But those inspections that you are recommending are not compulsory, are they? They're recommended.
That is correct, sir. It is recommendations.
It seems to me that we should consider making inspections, basic inspections, a requirement. And I think that whoever should study that, whichever committee should study that, it should be referred to that committee and evaluated with the assistance of staff to determine whether it's necessary, as you suggest it is, and then how we would go about adopting that. Obviously, in the Florida situation, the building had not been inspected by public authorities. They knew of some deficiencies, but they didn't do anything about them. And so I don't want to move that we adopt that now, but I do think, Mr. Mayor, that it should be studied so that we can determine the proper role of the town and the town building official in this. Thank you.
Glenn, I think we're gonna start with our state representatives. And I think the state should have some kind of facility or organization to do the state inspections. There's uniformity and everything. We might want to start with Representative Bradley.
Yes, I think that's good. I just think you ought to refer this to one of the committees, John, and get a process started.
Fine, okay. We'll send it. Yes, Alex.
Yeah, couple questions for Chris, and I received one of your letters, by the way, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm just curious to know, you mentioned that there is a trigger, I guess, for the conversation if a structure needs some attention or not, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
I'm just curious to know, say over the last 5 years, can you give us a round number as to how many you have identified? And also, as you answer that, have there been any of those conflicts that would have had to been resolved by I think you called it the Construction and Review Board?
Yes, the CBAA, Construction Board of Adjustments and Appeals. Yes, sir. If I had to give you a round number, I would say it's somewhere between 5 and 10 that we've dealt with within the last 5 years or so. And probably out of that 5 or 10, I would say 3 or 4, well, probably 4 or 5 have gone to the CBAA for that hearing. So not a lot because it's complaint driven. Keep in mind, this is all complaint driven, or, as staff finds or runs into these scenarios. We do not currently at the town have an active division of inspectors or codes enforcement officers that are actively out and about looking for these types of violations because, in the past, this has been complaint driven. And as we see an unsafe condition or a hazard to life safety that needs to be addressed. So that just keep that in mind. Now, as far as creating or actually delegating that responsibility to go into existing structures and do inspections on any sort of basis, that actually is managed through the Property Maintenance Code. That is not a code that the state has adopted as a mandatory code. It is a code that the state has allowed each jurisdiction as permissible to adopt within their ordinance as something that they want to enforce. Now keep in mind, within that code, it lays out a new division. It does not fall under the building division. It is a property management or property maintenance division, and it has its own director or manager over that division that handles those types of complaints and issues. And that could be anything from cutting grass to what we're talking about now, buildings that are in desperate need of repair.
And Glenn, to answer your question, we're going to send that to the Community Services Group.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't want to put Chris on the spot. If you don't have the answer right now, that's fine. But as we start to dive into this a little deeper, I understand that 4 or 5 over the last 5 years, but so that I have something to reference that to, I kind of need the total amount of structures on the island. Okay, and if you have that at the moment, that's fine. But that just helps with the magnitude, I think.
Total number of structures that are unsafe, or just total number of structures, period?
Period.
20,000.
That's a good ratio for that moment. Yeah, but complaint driven.
Anything else for Chris, please? Chris, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Continue good
Yes,
work.
sir. No problem. And again, I must reiterate that is complaint driven as we receive, emails and phone calls from the general public for us to investigate unsafe conditions. Thank you, sir. Thank you, council member.
Okay, the court, just a minute.
Yes, sir. And as we look at this and bring it to committee, Chris is spot on, and I'm glad to hear him bring up the property maintenance code. While not mandatory, it's definitely an option, and that's something that we'll look into a lot more and then bring it to the appropriate committee at the appropriate time. Next is a quarterly update, and you should all have this, and it should be available online. Terry, if it's not, please make sure it is after this meeting. The status for the Gullah Geechee top priority project recommendations. Just to tee this up, Mayor McCann has regularly asked me for the good updates from the Gullah Geechee Task Force, more not so much from the task force, but as a staff priority. And so what I have done, and knowing that Terry is leading that community development side, I have asked her, and not Dr. Sharice, but Terry, who is the lead there, to provide the update to you as council members. I appreciate all of Dr. Sharice's work. But please know this is a team effort and a team sport to accomplish these issues. Terry, for time's sake, and we're virtual, we know that this information is available. It's been in the packets. It's available online. Please highlight those important elements, especially and including the ones we recently talked about in my office, please.
Sure, absolutely. Good morning. My name's Terry Lewis. I'm the Deputy Community Development Director, and I'm happy to give you this quarterly update on the Gullah Geechee Top Priority Project recommendations. And as Mark said, I'll hit the highlights of it since everybody has a copy of it. And then, of course, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I do want to thank the Gullah Geechee Task Force members, though, before I get started, just because they've been integral in being able to move forward with these recommendations. So Levon Stevens, our chair, Palmer Simmons, our vice chair, Ibrahim Abdul Malik, Martha Davis, Shawnee Green, Teresa White, our 3 former members, Joyce Wright, Todd Theodore, and Carolyn McVitie, and our 3 new members, John Campbell, Mark O'Neill, and Thomas Hens. So I'd like to go ahead, we'll start at the beginning. Again, I'm not going to go through each of them for time's sake, but I do want to point out that on your chart, the recommendations 2, 3, and 4, I think it's really important to recognize that those have been completed. Those were part of the family compound, family subdivision, LMO amendments. We've already had several families come in to talk to us about that. They're excited about being able to use the flexibility that's been incorporated into these amendments. For number 5, Dr. DuBose has been working with the 5 Gullah churches, the First African Baptist Church, Queen Chapel African Methodist Episcopalian Church, St. James Baptist Church, Mount Calvary Missionary Baptist Church, Central Oak Grove Missionary Baptist Church. And she provides updates to the church leadership that they can then share with their members. And these updates are on both Gullah Geechee affairs and then topical issues as well, such as where to find out more information on the COVID vaccine and where and how people can obtain that vaccine. One of the items that you'll be hearing about soon at the committee level is the monthly Gullah market. We've been working closely with NIBCA on a business plan for this market. The location that's proposed that will be proposed to Town Council will be the Squire Pope Community Park, the Sailing and Rowing Center. NIBCA is currently advertising for a manager, and one of the duties will be to manage the market and its operations. And we're hoping that this market can open in November to coincide with the Gullah celebration so that those events can support one another. Another item that I think that you would be very interested in is a new program that Senator Scott recently announced through the Farm Services Agency. It's the Heirs Property Relending Program. And this is to resolve heirs property and succession issues. We are plugged into this effort, and we expect to have additional details within the next few months that we can share. Number 10, this is related to temporary and seasonal signage. Staff started to dive into this recommendation earlier this year and realized that the proposed signs didn't meet the sign code. Since changes to the code will be required, we're exploring whether this type of signage should be allowed island-wide. We're going to work with our consultants on any proposed LMO changes. For numbers 11 and 14, this is related to the Heritage Library Genealogy Clinic. And just last week, the town celebrated the opening of this clinic. This is a referral-based program that aids in conducting genealogical research for property owners who wish to clear land titles. The clinic's already working with their first family, and I'm very excited to share that USA Today covered the opening of the clinic in their News Around the State section of their paper in Monday's issue. Finally, number 16, Dr. DuBose works closely with Gullah property owners to help them understand both town regulations and what opportunities are available for their land. And something that we're going to do to assist with this is to set up a one-stop shop permitting assistance center and a Gullah Geechee design studio to further facilitate this help. I know I went through those kind of quickly. I'm happy to answer any questions or to go into any greater detail on any that you have.
Terry, what is the Links Inc.? It's on number 12.
Number 12, that's a seminar. The Center for Heirs Property Preservation puts on an annual seminar to educate the public on heirs property, forestry, and creating a will. And this is something that we promote to members of the Gullah Geechee community and that will continue to do so.
Alice.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to try to answer your question a little bit differently first. So Links Inc. is actually a nonprofit, I believe, women's organization who is looking to try to promote the education of heirs property. Okay, so I believe so.
That was a kind of no one knows the answer. Okay,
no, well, good question, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Orlando for really pushing on this particular topic. Well, you too, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm pleased to see that we have several items that have reached the 100% status, and there's several that are ongoing. I think that is important. I've just got a few that I'd like to point out here. And as you know, as we go through this process, as I have been all along, I'm extra critical when it comes to this topic. The first one, PP4, which encompasses the historic overlay district, and many items there. And the one that is, I guess, the toughest pill or the hardest to tackle is going to be the land uses and the zoning changes, okay? And I understand that and I can appreciate that. I'm just suggesting that as we move forward with our Mid-Island initiation exercise, where we are looking to pump some life into that area, that this particular recommendation worked coincidentally with that, okay? I think that that's very important that we understand the conditions within the historic neighborhoods and use that exercise to help us make sound decisions with zoning changes, okay? So that this is not perceived as being ignored while we move forward with something else. Okay, I think it's important that we move along in that fashion. The CP17 with the churches, the church is always the foundation. I want to also point out, however, that the churches during the last 18 months have been organizations that are not as active in terms of meeting and mingling, okay? So I would just encourage us to continue to meet potentially with families individually, the compounds, so that we're gathering more information, we're educating as to what we have passed thus far. I think that helps with that relationship between the town and the Gullah neighborhoods, and not necessarily just relying on the churches. I don't mind saying this out loud. In the African American church, they want to do church business before they do town business, okay? So if we are connecting with the families, I think we'll be a bit more effective there. The open air market, I'm definitely pleased about that. I've mentioned this before. You know, let's not lose sight of some opportunities on some currently Gullah-owned land that could meet the same goal. We don't necessarily want to, I guess, make this seem as if it's kind of a reservation type attempt. Okay, I think we need to be careful of that. All right, there are Gullah-owned properties that could fit the same purpose here.
May I ask, help me understand that.
the last task force meeting, the question was asked, was there any communication with property owners that have large tracts that are open, similar to what the town is in ownership of, that is open,
Okay.
that could be considered for this open air market type of activity, okay? So what I'm suggesting is that we look at both, all right? I think that will be much more receptive than pointing individuals to a certain area, and that's it. It's just limited there. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Check it out.
The educational piece, when it comes to town officials and town staff, I think I saw 25% there. I think we can do better than that, quicker than that, in my opinion, okay? We've got a lot of resources around us. It's just about being intentional about touching people and using resources that we already have in the community to bump that up. I'd really like to see that, say, 100% / ongoing. And the last on my list is the delinquent taxes. 11, it has here listed some organizations, and we thank Mr. Risa Wright with the Pan-African Network for the good work that she's doing with the delinquent taxes. I want to make certain that everyone understands there are two organizations that are very influential in that quest. Ms. White's organization is helping folks once they get on the redemption list, which is post the auction. Okay, so at that time you've got your last year delinquent holding over you and your new taxes over you, okay? There's another organization that is not listed here that has worked over the last 5 years to put monies in folks' hand before the auction, okay? And that is Low Country Gullah. So I don't know if there's a disconnect in terms of us touching one another, but when we get these reports, I'd like to see the active organizations, not just organizations that historically have been one that we can point at. Okay, those are my comments, Mr. Mayor. Thank you again for the push on this topic.
No questions?
No, excellent report.
Tammy?
I do have just some comments because I think there's a broad view that also needs to be kept in mind in terms of how some of these recommendations impact the entire island and residential neighborhoods, established residential neighborhoods outside of Gates that that needs to be looked at carefully, considered closely, and analyzed for the effect that, for instance, the overlay district would have on those communities and those residents. And I think that is a point that cannot be lost, forgotten, overlooked. And I just want to make sure that I'm clear on making that a point in this discussion. Certainly appreciate and respect education, as we all know, how important it is, not only to me, but to everyone. But I also would like to see the curriculums moving forward in terms of what's being suggested and how that comes together. Those are my two concerns that I want to make sure are documented so that they don't get lost in the forward movement on these items. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments by member of council? Good. I'd really like to see this report before the next quarter's up. I mean, 2 months is enough time.
Okay.
We should look at it again, not a quarter. It's been here a long time. We need to get it out of the way and get it finished and make things work well. You okay, Alex?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Now we're going to go into general report. But before that, I talked to Alex in great length, and I've talked to Glenn about the episodes of the other night. The other night, the opposition was well organized. They knew what they were doing. They planned it out very well. And we were just sitting ducks waiting to be picked off little by little. The sad part about it is even if we knew it was coming, we couldn't have done a hell of a lot under the whole, how we're laid out now. I'm going to put you on the spot here. What have you and Angie been talking about for the last day and a half now? I'll start with that.
Well, with Angie Stone, the reference is assistant town manager who's in really oversight of our communications. Really talked about making sure that we have the right message. There was, at least in the room from what I heard, is that there was this understanding that on the agenda, because of the state of emergency declared, that we were moving fast and furious without any time for public response to put a mask mandate in place, to start going back to where we were some time ago. What Angie and I talked about is making sure that our communication channels and our message is very clear about the intent of the emergency order the other night. And the emergency order the other night, as Angie and I spoke with Carolyn this morning, was to let the public know what we are hearing from the hospital CEO, what we are hearing from the reports from our emergency manager, and what we're hearing from DHEC, right? So those are typically my three channels that I hear from. I hear from the community, I hear from my family, I hear from my friends, of course. But I hear from DHEC that they are asking us to put masks on in closed spaces. That's what DHEC is asking and advising. We are also hearing that there is a Delta variant spike, and according to the hospital, not just our local hospital, but when we really just compare beds in states and ICU in state, their data is showing that that number is now in that red zone according to that data. And so the emergency order the other night was intended to at least acknowledge what we're hearing and to allow for virtual meetings. The way the ordinance is written here with us is that we are allowed to have virtual meetings by way of emergency order. And to do so, and to have a hybrid virtual meeting as we had Monday, and a high Monday with the workshop to kick off the Mid-Island track, we were asking to have a virtual meeting to allow full participation of council, as well as to have better accessibility of the public really, queuing in. So that was the intent of the meeting. And Angie and I talked and really questioned ourselves. Did we get the message out properly? Full disclosure, did we? And, we can always play Monday morning quarterback and figure out, no, we didn't entirely. We tried. We sent a media release out. We had a declaration. We posted on Facebook. We told as many people as we can, especially in the customer service center. But Angie and I talked about refining our message and making sure that we, again, in a day or so, that we will reiterate the message and the intent of the other evening. And that was to allow for some virtual or hybrid public meetings. And it was to have some confidence about wearing masks when we're sitting 3 feet away from each other in council chambers. No different than Beaufort, no different than Bluffton, no different than Beaufort County, no different than a lot of places in the state. But I would say too, what Angie and I also talked about is hearing the message and the emotion and the anger, and really the state of the affairs of the other evening. I think that Angie and I have a plan to communicate clearly, slowly, and effectively as a result.
That plan ought to be distributed to council as we're doing it. The other thing is that we can't have our messages, you always talk about this, go out with state of emergency being on the first line. It scares the shit out of people. They don't know what the hell's going on out there. It should be embedded in the message as opposed to being the message. Because as the message, it scares people along the way, and we get away from that being the message.
Right.
And put it in the bulk of the agenda.
Right. And I talk about that. And I would like to say and add to council that the message the other evening wasn't intended to scare anybody. It sure wasn't intended to scare the community. I know a lot of people that showed up in that room, or some of the people, one, I didn't appreciate being in a situation like that, but can I say I understood it? Perhaps. And I hear you loud and clear, Mayor. You did share that with me. You showed me the title. And Angie and I are in lockstep, and I believe in her and in the team that I have with Carolyn, and we'll do better.
Just a couple of things. We have to start going slower than we're going now. And we're trying to get too many things done too quick, no matter whether it's the meetings here, no matter what it is, and we're starting to run over things that are important, like checking what goes out and checking what we really mean. And sometimes slowing down will get us where we want to be faster along. But having said that, I believe that last week's meeting is not the last of its kind. No matter what we do messaging, people all over the country are in this thing that they're going to be billed for something all the time, everywhere we're going to go. So if it isn't last week on something, it'll be something else next week. And if people start doing these meetings, somebody will be violent somewhere along the way. And we need to be prepared for that violence. And I don't know what the answer is, but I know collectively we got to figure out something. Then we have to bring the sheriff in after we figure out collectively what we want to do. Because I'm concerned, and I'm not concerned about the people that we know. I'm concerned about people we don't know. And we got the money for the chamber and everything. That should be the first thing on our list now, is to secure that chamber, council chamber. Everybody in that room feels safe. And no one is in our building. We're having a council meeting and we don't want one in our building. Whether it means just people by the door, no matter what it means. And I don't know the answer, Mark, but we have to secure the place where the people that work for you and the people, the council members and the staff members, all are secure, and we feel that they're all secure, so we know what's going on. Now, the sheriff will get involved in the conversation next week. We'll talk to them, then we'll bring the council back in. But we need a plan, because we're all individuals, whether we talk about it or not, concerned and worried. It's an issue. And if we can't secure our own house, how the hell are we going to secure the island and make the island people feel safe and secure along the way? So I'm deeply concerned, as you and me talk all the time. I want the council to know that we're deeply concerned, and they should be deeply concerned too. And any ideas we have are better than what we have now. We can start with something along the way. I don't think we should put things in the paper, because I don't want to give these groups any more credit than they have. I mean, we have to do real things like protecting ourselves, and not fight in the press where people will think, oh, we're doing good, we can do more, the bad people. I think Jennifer's letter going out to all the citizens of the city are good, but we need to go on our own offensive here and protect ourselves. With that, questions, comments?
I really can't add to what's been once stated. I can add some emphasis. I think in terms of communication, it seemed clear to me that we had people in the room that for one reason or the other were on a different page than what we were. They did not have the same clarity of thought on what we were doing. And for example, we had people there that I think thought this was the Board of Education meeting. I think we need to realize that the social media is they are the major communication vehicles for a lot of people today. And I think many of us know that this was being bantered about on social media the day before. And I think we have to tune into that and be very cognizant of what's being said out there in the community, so we have a little advance notice. And I think from our chambers, they're not big. They have a limited capacity. I don't have the answer, but that resource has to be managed better for us. And I think the one thing is, I think if we communicate clearly what we're doing better than what we have been doing, it would go a long way.
It will, Bill, but we still have those unhappy groups that are going to find a reason to be unhappy. And we got to protect ourselves against what's coming in that we don't know.
Sure.
It's worried. Alex?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really appreciate your comments, and I agree with the communication piece. I don't want to unhash details at this point, but we're in the business of connecting with people, okay, and that's going to continue to happen. And we need to be in a position where we are able to listen to everyone. It's regardless of if we agree or disagree, our ears are open to listen, and I want to continue to respect that to the utmost. But John's right. Absent this particular topic, what's the next controversial topic? And if we've got both sides that show up to address us at the same time, ultimately we could have a situation on the hand that we are not equipped to deal with. And what John's asking you to do, Mark, as far as the plan is concerned, I like to see it quickly so that we know with some confidence that we are prepared when and if it happens, because it only has to happen once and go completely south, and you can't pull it back, right? So, I appreciate the sheriff responding on Tuesday. However, I want to feel confident that I know who it is that is making the call, because at this point, if a constituent was to ask me, if things were to get out of control in chambers, who makes the call? I can't answer that question. I think we need to all be able to answer that question.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. And I agree with that. And in my 5.5 months here, I have my own protocols in place. I know where Josh is at all times. I know what Chief is doing. I know what Angie is doing, but have I written that down and communicated that externally? No, I'll take a look at what the organization has done. And I would say that we have a long way to go, which is very much appreciated. The American Rescue Plan funding to put a security program in place, not just for me, my staff, and you, but for the community, because they deserve to be here and be able to do business peacefully and confidently. And that will be soon in the works. And I appreciate you encumbering and directing that investment as you agreed to it today.
Glenn?
Thank you. Mayor and my fellow colleagues, I certainly agree with everything you've said here. That was a most disturbing experience we had, and I don't know whether we handled it very well. And so, Mark, I look forward to working with you in any way necessary to work towards development of a plan, a response that is everyone understands is going to happen in the event a meeting becomes disruptive, as that one did clearly. And so it seems to me that there needs to be a policy that is adopted by council, that in the event of a disruptive activity in a meeting, that the council will take the following action: 1, 2, 3, 4. No, I don't know exactly what those should be right now, but I'm happy to work with whoever and share ideas and thoughts. Finally, I want to say that this is not a Hilton Head Island specific phenomenon. I have spoken to a good friend down on St. Simon's. He says exactly the same thing is going on down there: disruptive behavior in public meetings. I saw something where it has happened in Charleston as well. So I think this is probably fed by social media. And this was a somewhat organized group. At least they came in all at one time. And so we need to be prepared for that. And I agree that this needs to be a priority. But John, I think you've put the right highlights on it. Thank you.
Thank you. So one other thing while we're talking about procedures, when we call a recess to leave the chambers, I'd appreciate if every councilman left the chambers. You can't leave 1 or 2 council people behind. The purpose of leaving a chamber is to get outside of the crowd and move away so we can talk among ourselves and don't leave any council person there to be open to the crowd, to be open to dialogue, to be open to anything. I mean, my concern is getting all of you off that dais as quick as we possibly can so we can catch a break, the crowd can catch a break. But I'd appreciate if no one sat there, because it's not the right thing to do. You're not helping us at all by sitting there during that period of time. David, can you say a few words?
If you're asking me to say a few words, at the risk of coughing, I'd rather not.
Okay, good. Feel better, David.
Okay.
Thomas?
John, we heard a point of view from the group that was in the council chambers, and they all shared the same point of view. I think it's necessary to say that there's a very large group out there that has the opposite point of view, and I heard from them today. So I think the steps that we take to assure security and decorum in council chambers will certainly go a long way.
The emails I've been getting, Tom, have been overwhelmingly in favor of us and opposed to the people that were there. Overwhelming. Jenny?
Thank you. A number of things. I'm going to continue to be an idealist, I think, in part here. And I'm going to agree that with your initial statement that slowing down gets us further down the road, and that a better communication strategy is certainly warranted and appreciated by all. No matter whose side shows up or emails us, I, for one, listen carefully. It's my responsibility and duties. Each person has a voice, but in that voice, and I've said it repeatedly to everyone, there has to be respect. Mutual respect is responsibility and duties. And civility. And civility in all of these types of communications. I don't know who's talking over me, but communication. So having those core values present not only among ourselves, and we do, each one of us, I know each of us well, and I know that we all agree on that. I, again, respectfully ask that those who both attend our meetings and email us have that same sort of respect. I don't know what's happened across the country where that basic core value has gotten lost, but we need to find it to move together slowly so that we can get to where we want to go peacefully. I too hear from both people who showed up and via email from all sides. And I listen, I respect, and I use information from that, from what's available from our valued sources through DHEC and through our fire department and from the CDC and from wherever information comes. And it comes in a variety of different ways and focuses, but it's all valuable information. At the bottom line, once a decision is made, there has to be an acceptance of what it is that has been tried to be done on the community's behalf. Some will agree with us and others won't. I'll go back to my idealistic point and ask everyone who hears this, who reads and hopefully reads accurate descriptions of what takes place in our chambers and in our town, accurate descriptions, that we begin with respect, civility, and maintain that through all that we do, whether it's regarding masks or anything else that comes before this group, this council, and this community. I don't have much more to say. I respect you all. I do believe that my place, and we may want to talk about this further separately, I'm not walking out on anyone. My job is to sit there to represent my constituents in this town. And I'm not running from anyone. That's all. Thanks.
Okay,
Yes, sir. Mayor Kelsel, thank you for your comments too. They helped me think through it. I will bring you back very soon a safety and decorum policy and procedure. One, safety, please know I'm already working on that. I've started that 60 days ago. The fact that there are some real dollars on the table that I don't have to find from other projects is so helpful. So please know I appreciate that. The procedures are just updating some policies and having a plan as Councilman Stanford outlined. And I want to reiterate, the other night, the emergency order, as we explained it in a press release prior to council, was about allowing a hybrid virtual meeting. I had already asked staff to wear masks in closed areas. In my opinion, no different than Starbucks when I just got a coffee there yesterday. But I've also asked, because of that emergency order and because it was being ratified, I asked that masks be worn in the public setting as you went to the building. And again, no different than many municipalities or counties or universities, state-funded agencies, public-funded agencies are doing across the state and nation. So again, I heard the message. I am here to support you, and I will have these policies and practices and systems in place as soon as I possibly can. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Stamps, anything new on the Low Country Area Transportation Group?
Very briefly, we did have a meeting a couple of weeks ago. Craig Wynn reported on the preferred alternative for the corridor project and also acknowledged that there had been many questions raised about no left turns, traffic signals, and he stated that revisions to the preferred alternative are likely. Then on a very positive note, Palmetto Breeze reported that in excess of 40,000 people have ridden the buses between the beginning of this spring and the end of July. And that is, in my mind, largely because it's a free ride. So I think that system is starting to work. That's my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, thank you. Mr. Lennox, the Southern Low Country Regional Board.
Yes, John, but before I give you that report, I'd like to make a general report. On August 13th, last Friday, Taylor Ladd, Jennifer Ray, and I attended the Island Rec Association strategic planning meeting. It was Frank Soul and this whole board. They went over organizational challenges and operating challenges. And it was a very, very good meeting. And my hats off to Frank. Soloco met July 27th. Talked about the county bike and ped trails. They're working on over 100 miles of trails countywide. Second agenda item was continued discussion of the proposed Regional Housing Trust Fund. Eric Greenway presided over that and gave an update on where it stands. We can look for some sort of a final draft coming out in the next 30 days. The intent is for Eric and his staff to make presentations to each one of the municipalities in the 2-county area. Lastly, we had the presentation on the Antioch Education Center. It's a interesting operation, Alex, and one that I should get information to you on. Also, we held a Finance and Administrative Committee meeting yesterday, and the agenda items were the 2 that you passed in council today, along with the preliminary and unaudited update on the town's fiscal year end, June 30th, of 2021. That's my report, John.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hawkins, the Community Service and Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On July 26th, our committee had the pleasure of listening to Jen McEwen present her Cultural Affairs Strategic Plan. We suggested some reformatting, and we'll be requesting to you, Mr. Mayor, that be an agenda item at our September meeting. Likewise, we approved several drainage easements and drainage agreements, and we would like to bring those forward to Town Council in September. And the last item, we reviewed and discussed an ordinance regarding the prohibition of certain beach tents. And we had a lively discussion on that and suggested to ourselves that more refinement was necessary, and it will be coming back at a future undetermined date.
Thank you very much.
That's it. That's my report.
Mr. Lennox, can I come back to you on the Finance Administrative Committee?
I've given it, John.
Good, thank you. Okay, appearance by citizens, Mr. Hoagland. Mr. Hoagland. Calvin. Okay.
Is he on there?
He is on there.
Is he muted? Did we mute him?
You sure we're still on?
Mr. Hoagland? Mr. Hoagland?
Can we see the list? We didn't mute him?
Mr. Hoagland?
Okay, here he is.
Hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, good. Skip Hoagland, Windmill Harbor, you're in violation of FOIA. Tamara, you always seem willing to respond and show courtesy to those who address
Mr. Hoagland, we've lost your connection, sir. We'll go to Mr. Sweeney, Matt Sweeney. Mr. Sweeney?
Yes, thank you. I'm disappointed that you just passed consideration for use of the American Rescue Funds without first hearing from residents. The staff's recommendations for how to spend the $5.2 million from the taxpayer-funded American Rescue Plan raise more questions than I can address in my 3 minutes, so I'll just talk about 2 of them. One is allocate $1 million to town hall security and technology improvements. I hope before the town council approved this expenditure, you studied a detailed budget from staff on what security and technology improvements are needed and how they're related to COVID. Most important to me now is the $1 million for the Community Foundation of the Low Country, which you all know is a local 501c3 nonprofit. The latest available IRS Form 990 for the Community Foundation shows that in 2019, they paid out $7 million in grants, but they also spent $1.1 million for salaries and related expenses. Overall, 32% of their total expenses did not go directly to grantees, but instead paid for staff, program expenses, fund administration, and other fees. That means only 70 cents on the dollar are left for grants. As you may know, the Community Foundation provides grants only to other 501c3 nonprofits, which also have their own expenses. So in the end, only 50% of our tax dollars would go to those who were adversely impacted by COVID. In addition, the foundation's board ultimately decides. So the board decides, not you, our elected officials, who receives the grants. None of the foundation's decision makers were elected by Hilton Head taxpayers. It's also not clear where the final beneficiaries of the foundation's grants are located. If our money goes to the foundation's COVID-19 response fund, then they say recipients are in Beaufort, Colleton, Hampton, and Jasper counties. If it's treated just like the foundation's other impact grants, then recipients are in Hilton Head, Defusky, and Bluffton. But aren't we talking about money earmarked for Hilton Head? So please let me summarize my concerns. Residents who are most directly impacted by COVID should benefit from all of the American Rescue Plan funds earmarked for us, not just 50 cents on the dollar. Unelected people at a nonprofit should not decide who qualifies to receive our taxpayer dollars. Taxpayer dollars earmarked for your constituents in Hilton Head should only go to Hilton Head residents. And these charities should only be supported by voluntary donations by individuals, not taxpayer dollars from our elected officials. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney.
Skip Sino.
Mr. Hoagland, are you back on the line, sir? Ms. Shodan Lee, Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Krista. I'm here.
Thank you,
Good
Ms.
morning.
Lee.
My statement is designed for the audience because you still don't understand that people are frustrated. A wise man once said, as long as people sincerely believe that they can change things through their voice, they don't storm the Bastille. For those on the call, regardless of your political persuasions, we should all agree that America was founded on the principle that the government is of the people, for the people, and by the people. The Declaration of Independence specifically stated that governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed to protect their natural rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In addition, we should all agree that Washington is broken. The genius of the framers lies in their design to create a federalist republic, so we the people can take our grievances directly to the elected officials nearest to us. Unfortunately, the mayhem from yesterday's town hall meeting proves that the arrogant and tyrannical politicians live in every town, city, and county in our country. To cite a few examples, town manager Orlando claimed that declaring the state of emergency was for our own good. I can only infer that the few officials in Hilton Head town government and the town council people are more intelligent than the collective wisdoms of the 30,000 plus residents on Hilton Head. And we have to rely on them to tell us what's good for ourselves. Mayor McCann yelled at the crowd, "We gave you 30 minutes," and called out the county deputies as if we were unruly mobs and had nothing better to do but to harass and threaten them. I would argue that the mayor needs to show some respect to those people who pays his salaries, to spend more time listening to his constituents, and to govern by consent. I voted for you last year. Fool me once, shame on me. At your May 4th meeting, 92% of town residents rejected the extension of face mask mandates. Yesterday's meeting clearly demonstrated that more would reject the declaration of state of emergency and the face mask advice. Yes, I know it's an advice, it's not a mandate, but still people showed up to reject that advice because it benefits no one, not even the public employees you claim to protect. I could only surmise that your decision was meant to hold future town hall meetings behind the computer screens to avoid direct interaction with the great unwashed, as Mr. Orlando confirmed today. Today, the council people approved the 5.2 million COVID relief funds without any public input or understanding what you just endorsed, as Matt Sweeney just testified about the community foundation of the Low Country. James Madison warned that charity
Thank you,
is
Ms.
no
Lee.
part.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Your 3 minutes has concluded. Mr. Hoagland, are you back on the line, Mr. Hoagland?
I'm
Mr. Hoagland.
muted.
Yes.
Skip Hunt there.
Mr. Hoagland.
Skip to his car.
Okay. Sir, I'm unable to connect to Mr. Hoagland.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Skip Hoagland, Windmill Harbor, you're in violation of FOIA and you will owe my legal fees under South Carolina law. Tamara, you always seem willing to respond and show courtesy to those who address this council. Can you answer the following for me? And also I would like everybody to make note of these questions and get these answers for me if you don't mind. It would be much appreciated, especially Alex Brown, who I consider to be one of the more really the most honest person on this council. That's very unfortunate that he's the only one. Can you tell me why you vote to approve millions of tax funds of Bill Miles issued to this council by the South Carolina Treasury when Bill Miles refuses his accounting as a secret sauce? It seems that Bill Miles, with all of his funding and tax funding from different sources, is approaching $10 million with zero oversight and accounting. This should be very concerning to all of you on what's getting ready to happen and how are you going to answer the questions to authorities. What are you going to say to them when they come knocking on your door? You need to really think about that. Tell me why you are a tax-paid member. All of you are members of the Hilton Head Chamber, which is in conflict, and you're not asking for Bill Miles for access for his chamber records under the Nonprofit Corporation Act law. So you're all violating that law and taxpayers as well. How is it legally possible Bill Miles can pay himself a $500,000, $600,000, we don't really know, salary and pay package by the use of tax funds? How is that possible? Tell me why you allowed Bill Miles to take over $1 million and still being sent to Canada. And Mark Orlando from Canada, you need to find this out. You're a Canadian. You should find out what he's doing with all that money to develop an app and a website that he claims he owns versus a town. How can Bill Miles own the app and the website, even paying $100,000 for an app that should have cost $20,000? I was in that business. I know all about technology. Tell me why Bill Miles has been the hired DMO for 35 years with no procurement. You all are violating procurement and you're being sued for procurement by Taylor Smith, the South Carolina Press Association lawyer. Why are you not taking fair bids for others? And how can Bill Miles remain the DMO, refusing full accounting and a valid contract that you even corrupted? Lastly, when a new DMO is hired, what happens to the 1 million plus app and website that Bill Miles claims he owns? How is a new DMO going to get access to that $1 million app and website if Bill Miles claims that he and the chamber own it? Are you going to send another $1 million to Mr. Orlando? Are you going to send another $1 million to Canada, to your home country, for another app and a website for the new DMO? You people need to wake up. You need to wake up. You got a response, Mr. Orlando. You want to answer? You got a response to any of this?
Thank you, Mr. Hoagland.
Okay, now that we've had everything on the agenda, is there anything else we should talk about?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor. Now that we are in this virtual setting, and I can appreciate us moving to Zoom, I guess we can at least see the public as they're speaking to us. But I do want us to understand a bit better how we are to receive public comment on the agenda items. That does stick out to me, okay? And I know past virtual experience was folks would have to call and sign up only for the appearance by citizens, which I think brings some confusion to the table because we as a council have not had the opportunity to discuss and have those from the community respond in case to what we have discussed. So that piece needs to be figured out in this virtual settings to some degree. I'm just not comfortable with.
Thank you, right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Brown, I agree with you. And working with John Tuttle here with me and our web administrator, Renee Phillips, we've been taking down some notes from today's meeting to refine the process. And with Mark's permission, we'll get a refined process to Mark to review and up to council to review as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, just put out that comment, just waste no time. We want to respond to it all on Zoom.
Sure, I'm very fine with that. I lean on the town clerk to help with those processes, so I appreciate you putting that together.
Yes, Tammy.
I just wanted to agree that our parents by citizens need to coordinate with the business that we're discussing as it would if we were in chambers. But secondly, I think there's back to that communication piece. As I recall, with regard to the monies being sent to the foundation, there was a stipulation in there that were parameters will be set up in accordance to what it is that the town wishes those where and how those monies to be spent within the organization. Additionally, as I recall, Alex, I think you asked during the F&A meeting whether or not there were, and maybe it was a different topic, so correct me if I'm wrong, whether there were any associated fees. Maybe that was something else, as actually I'm looking at my notes. That may have, I'm not sure, but you can clarify that for me. Are there any associated fees? Is that overhead taken out of our funds?
There are no associated fees that would be presented by me through this MOU that I will put together with the community foundation. So no, the community will receive $1 for $1.
Thank you. The questions were right. No, were good questions. Had we had it the order differently, I would have asked. Thank you for the time.
Okay, with that, have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir.